Okay, good morning.
Good
We're
morning.
on 70A, the mission at the very top. When we're continuing to discuss the parameters of the rebellious son, the Ben Sarah. Um, so now the mission is going to describe what actually is a Ben Sarah from a technical definition point of view. What does one have to do to become liable? When does the son become liable for the punishment for the judgment of Ben Sarumara? So the Torah describes it as the parents come to the court and they say, that our son doesn't listen to us. Um, Zolel v'soveh. He is so it's let's see, how would we translate that? I was going to look this up in my favorite translation, which is not on my desk right now. Um, Zolel v'soveh. Let's see if we got it here anywhere. Well, it generally means gluttony, and the Gemara will parse out exactly from the words Zolel v'soveh what that implies, what specifically that implies. So, Ad sheyochel tartemar basar v'yishte chatzi log yain he talki. Um, the specifically he has to eat gluttonously a this measure tartemar, a measure of meat, which the Gemara will discuss what that is, and drink a half a log of Italian wine. Italian wine is understood to be a fine wine that is more addictive, perhaps, than others, or not maybe addictive is the wrong term, but draws you in. If you drink one glass, you want another one. And the Gemara will discuss the details of that as well. Rabbi Yossi Omer, mana basar v'log yain, a mana of meat and a full log of wine. So you have Charlie, you're not here, are you? If Charlie were here, he would probably explain to us. A mana is usually is a monetary amount, right? It's 100 dinar. But I think that currency was more a question of, like, if you had a mana of silver, that means you had a certain weight of silver. It wasn't so much the coins backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. It has to do with weight as well. So you can apply that weight to meat as well. So that's a lot of weight, a fair bit of meat. Achal b'chaburas mitzvah. But if you eat these things in a gathering for a mitzvah. For example, achol be'ibur achodesh. So we have this idea, which I have not encountered elsewhere, that there would be a celebration of the of when the month was intercalated. So a month can be 29 or 30 days, and there's a whole procedure on how to determine how the court determines if there is going to be an extra day in the month or not. So here is a reference to a meal that celebrates that pronouncement by the court, and that is considered a sudas mitzvah of sorts. That eating in that context does not count as ben sarumara. Achal maser sheni b'Yerushalayim, or another mitzvah thing you could do is eat maser sheni, the second tithe that you had to bring to Yerushalayim. So if you brought to Yerushalayim and ate it there, that's considered a mitzvah related thing as well. Or achal nevelos utrefos shkasir masim, you eat something that's not kosher, then that doesn't count either. That's like a separate sin. This is not a problem of ben sarah Mara. It's not a problem of disregarding your parents. It's a question of disregarding God, disregarding the Torah. So that doesn't qualify as ben sarah Mara. Umaser sheni v'hektish lo niftu, or again, these things are things that you cannot eat. You're not permitted to eat. Maser sheni that has not been redeemed, or hektish, something belongs to the temple that has not been desanctified. Or achal davar shu mitzvah v'davar shu avera, or if you ate like half of the measure that was a mitzvah food and half that was an avera food. Or you ate anything, you had a gluttonous meal but did not include meat, or or any other drink but wine. None of these things count. to become a ben sarumar, ad sheyochel basar yishayin. You have to drink the specified measures, of course, of meat and wine. Shenamar, because the Torah says zolel v'sovei. Here he translates it: a glutton and a guzzler. Um, even though I can't like 100% prove to you that this means eating meat and wine, uh, there's an allusion to it. Shenemar al tihi b'sov yayin b'zol lebasar. Don't be among those who guzzle wine and who gluttonously eat meat. So this kind of links these terms zolel v'sovei to meat and wine.
Well, why does Rashi say that if he stole from his father, he would be pater?
Um, because that's eating stolen goods. That is something of an avera.
Uh-huh. So because it's an Avera, it doesn't count then, even if he were to consume in this manner.
Right.
Hmm. All right.
Amar Vizera, Tartamar Zani Yodea. What is a tartamar? I don't know what it is. What is this measure? El Mitosha Kaf or Biosibiya Nimsa Kofel Af Babasar. If you look at Rabbi Yossi's view, whereas the Tanakhama said half a log of wine is the measure, and Riosi says, no, a full measure, a full log. So he's doubling it. So I'm going to assume that he's doubling the meat also. So if Riosi says a full mana of wine of meat, then the tartamer must be half a mana of wheat of beef of meat. Um, uh,
They're double.
Nimsa tartamar, nimsa tartamar chatzimana. So a tartamar must be half a mana, half of what Rabbi Yossi says.
Well, it
Okay,
says
well,
kofa afba basar. It
yeah,
double on the meat.
right. So you have two views. You have the Tanakhama, who says a tartamar of meat and half a log of wine, and you have Rabbi Yossi, who says a mana of meat and a full log of wine. So it looks like Rabbi Yossi is doubling, because even though I don't know what a tartamar is, he's doubling the wine from half a log to a full log. So it must be that um, that the mana is double the tartamar as well, and therefore a tartamar is half a mana,
Mhm.
which is 50 dinar for those who are counting. Amar Rav Chanan bar Molda Amar Rav Huna. Uh, he's taking this from the word zolel. It's you have to buy your meat cheaply, right? Don't you're not going to to Le Marais and buying a nice cut of meat there. You're going to Muncie and buying from Evergreen, the cheapest you can find. And yain bezol v'yishta. Also, we're talking about cheap wine, not expensive wine. D'chsiv zol el v'sove. So zol implies is the same zolel as an implication of zol, something that's cheap. It has to be raw meat and undiluted wine. Any is that right? They said the opposite. If you eat raw meat or undiluted wine, that doesn't count for a ben sarvar. Lavina yain chai mazig v'lo mazig. When he's talking about um, uh, when he says yayin chai, undiluted wine, it means partially diluted. It's diluted, but not to the proper amount. So, as you may recall, it seems like the kind of wine that was produced in Talmudic times was very strong, and in order to drink it, you would water it down. Sometimes you find that in whiskey today. You find cask strength whiskey, which is meant to be watered down before you drink it. Um, so bashil and bashil when basar chai bashil v'lo bashil, and when he says raw meat, he doesn't mean really raw. It means partly cooked. Basar kiva de'achle ganve, like scorched, seared meat that thieves eat. So you actually find this in Shabbos, right? There's machal ben drusai. You can eat some
Right.
if something is cooked at least one third before Shabbos and it continues to cook in your oven, unattended, then you can, as long as it's partially cooked before Shabbos, and it's okay. And that's called Machal Ben Drusai. If I remember right, Ben Drusai was some kind of a brigand, and these people are eating on the run,
Then
so
he
they
would
don't
run.
cook their meat fully.
He would take off, he would run with the food or something like that.
Yeah. Rabbi Rav Yosef Demer Tervayu, and another criteria is Rabbi and Rav Yosef both say, "Achal basar maliyach v'shlosi migito." If you drink eat salted meat, or drink wine that's like fresh from the wine press, and an asam and saramara, that doesn't count. What does that mean? It's non-hasam. We have a or what do we know about salted meat and raw wine, or not raw wine but fresh wine? It's not hasam. We have another mishnah. Erev Tisha B'av lo yochel adam shtei tavshilin. On your meal before the fast of Tisha B'av, you can't have two cooked foods. V'lo yochel basar v'lo yishtei yain. No meat and no wine. Vitana, I know what you're going to ask me. Like, you can't eat the whole 9 days, right? Or Sephardim, whatever their custom is. Um, but that may have been a later development. I don't know. Vitana, we have a mission about that. Aval ochel hu basar maliach v'shosi yain migito. Okay, you can't eat meat and you can't drink wine, but you can eat salted meat and you can drink um, like fresh wine. Basar maliach ad kama. What does it mean? Like, how salted? So salted meat is when you salt meat, it's a preservative, right? So it means like meat that's been sitting around for a while but preserved. So how long does it have to sit around, or how long does it have to be salted and preserved in order to qualify for being edible on Erev Tisha B'av? Amar China Barkana, Kozman Shu Kishlamim. As long as it's like a carbon shlamim. So carbon shlamim could be eaten for what, 2 nights in the day, I think. Um, do I remember right? Yeah, two days in the night, I should say.
Days and a night, I
Yeah,
think.
2 days in the night. So if it's been salted for less time than that, it's still kind of in the fresh meat period. Then it's considered meat. But after that, it's not considered meat for these purposes anymore. V'yan migito, what about fresh wine? Kosman shu toses. As long as it's still fermenting, you can drink it. But once it has completely turned from grape juice to wine, then it's considered real wine, and you can't drink it anymore for Tisha B'av, or to qualify as a ben sarah mara. Vahatanya, so Gemara asks, what about this brisa? Yain toses ein bo mishum gilui. Um, um, so there's a rule about uncovered liquids that you can't leave them
The snake.
uncovered
You got
overnight
the
because
snake,
of
the snake,
danger,
snake.
right? So it doesn't apply to wine that's fermented. Even kama to sisasa. When is that period? Shlosha yamim. That's 3 days. Um, so that's different than the 2 days and the night that we just said. So more answers. Hachamai. Um, what do we conclude regarding a Ben Saromara? Hasa mishum simcha. Uh, there's different reasons for these laws, right? Why can't you eat these things on Erev Tisha B'av? Because they're integrally related to simcha, to joy. Uh, so then you use the criteria kol zman shu kishlamim. So then it makes sense, right? Because the Gemara often says that what simcha is often defined as something that is related to the Beis Hamikdash, right? So that's why you say on Yom Tov, "Ein simcha ela b'basar v'yayin." Why? Because in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tov, um, you would have meat from your karbanos and wine from your nesachim. But so the meat that is still fresh enough to be eaten as a shlamim, that is related to simcha. But But in case of Ben Saramar, it's nothing to do with simcha. It's with, like, the idea is that if the Ben Sora Mora is eating something that will draw him into continuing to do this behavior, right? I used the word addictive before. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but it's the same idea, right? That if you've started down this path, you're going to continue down this path. Um, so it's a different definition. Uvachol shehu lo mimshich. Uvachol shehu lo mimshich. If it's salted, even for, like, once you've started to preserve it and you've salted the meat, then it's not like fresh meat, right? It tastes different, right? It doesn't matter if it's how long it's been preserved. It already tastes different because you've salted it. V'yayin adar b'yom yom, and wine isn't addictive until it's 40 days old. So um, that's why the definition of Basar and yain is different for Erev Tisha B'Av and for Ben Sarumar. Rav Chanan, l'nivra yain ba'olam
But is
el
he
nachem.
allowed? Didn't we
Hmm?
wait? It passed the strumming period. You're allowed to eat the meat 2 days in the night. So
Right?
this meat is salted, is salting or salted more than whatever it is. It continues to salt more than 2 days in a night. So is he is he allowed to eat it, or are we just saying it's
No, what we're saying is
like
what
the
we're
time
saying is
period?
once what we're saying is for the purposes of Tisha B'Av, it matters how long the meat has been salted, right? But for the purposes of Ben Sora or Mora, right, as soon as the meat's been salted, it doesn't qualify as making someone a Ben Sora or Mora because it's not the kind of meat that's going to draw you into eating more of it. Okay, if you like fresh steak and you eat, you know, um, what do the South Africans call that stuff? Biltong, right? And biltong is not going to, uh, I mean, South Africans might beg to differ, but the idea is biltong is not going to draw you into eating more and more of it the same way as fresh steak would. So as soon as the meat is salted, it no longer qualifies for a food that would make you a ben saromora. There's no time period at all. Once it's salted, it tastes different.
Oh, and so that period is
That period, there's no
two
time
two
period.
days.
As soon as it's been salted, it's not no longer meat for the purposes of ben saromora. Whereas for Tisha B'Av, it's a whole different thing. It's like it depends how long it's been salted. If it's been salted, if it's still within 2 days of being salted, you can't eat it on Tisha B'Av because that has to do with simcha, not the taste.
So
So fresh
less than,
meat that's fresh enough to be a shlamim qualifies as something that engenders simcha.
so that's less than 2.5 days in this case, right?
Right, right. Amar of
Beyond.
Chanan. Well, Nivriyan Be'olam El Menachem Avelim U'Lashalim Sachal Rishayim. Why do we have wine in this world? To comfort the mourner and um, to comfort the mourner and L'shalim Sachar L'shaim to give a reward to the wicked. In other words, like in Olam Hazeh, they'll get their reward in Olam Hazeh, and then they can be punished in Olam Haba. So the drinking of the wine is something they'll enjoy, and that's part of their schar. Shenemar Tnu Schar La'oved V'yayin L'mari Nefesh. Give wine to one who is lost, uh, and wine to one who is bitter. Okay, Amar B'Yitzchak. My dechsiv al yayin ki yadam. Why does it say don't look at wine that's red? Al yayin shemadim pneim shel rishayim ba'olam hazeh. Don't look at wine because it makes the faces of the wicked red in this world, like it makes them, look happy and satisfied, whatever. Umalbim pneim l'olam haba. But in olam haba, they will experience being pale, right? It's that term malbin panim is like being embarrassed or something like that. So it's okay. It's a homiletic device saying wine, saying the same thing that you might enjoy drinking your wine now if you're wicked, but you're going to get your due punishment in Olam Haba. Rav Amar Tira Yain Ki Sadam. What about that pasuk? Don't look at wine when it's red. It means Al Tera Yain Shachariso Dam. Don't look at wine because it's going to it'll cost you in blood. In other words, it'll cause your death. Rav Kana Rami. Rav Kana asks, Ksiv Tirosh, V'Karinan Tirosh. Um, the word tirosh, which is like produce of wine of grapes, it's written without a vav. Tirosh and is written, and tirosh is how we pronounce it. Zacha nasarosh. If you have merit, then this wine will be for you rosh. You'll become a leader. Lo zacha nasa rosh, but rosh without the vav it means poor. Rava Rame. Rava asks, Ksiv Yisama Chukrinan Yisam. One second. Ksiv Yisama Chukrinan Yis Ksiv Yisamach Ukrinan Yisamach. How do you know to pronounce the shin as a sin, right? Zacha Mesamcha, because if you merit it, then wine will make you happy. Sameach. Lo zacha Mishamamehu. If you're not Zocha, then it will destroy you. So the same Shin Mem is from Shemama, from destruction. Behind the Amar Rava, that's what Rava said. Chamra v'rechane pakichin. Wine and perfume made me wise. So in other words, he was zocha that wine was good for him, and not bad for him. Amar Vamar and Breder Rabbi Shimon Bar Abba Chanina. Rav Amram said, "My dechsiv lemi oy lemi avoy lemi midyanim." What about this pasuk in Mishlei, which is to who is woe, to who is oy and avoy, and who has midyanim, which translates here as quarrels,
I
arguments.
think it's midanim, right? Without a yud there.
Um,
It's midanim. Yeah,
Midanim.
I think you're adding a
Okay.
yud.
Yeah. In other words, not people from Midian, but arguments. Lemi siach, lemi p'tzayim chinam, lemi chachilus einayim. It's the rest of the pasuk. Who has pain and injuries and red eyes? Lema'achri mahayayin laboim lachar mimsach. Those who hang around wine, and who look for good wine. Kiasa Rav Dimi Amar. So Rav Dimi explained this when he came. Amar Marava. They say in the West, Hi Kra. Man de darish le me reshe l'sefe midrish. If you understand it from start to finish, then you can understand it. Umisefe l'reshe midrish, but you can also understand it backwards. Um, which in other words, the one is not a result of the other. Each clause stands independently. It's not that one leads to the other. Darish Oved
Isn't he
Gila.
saying that that you can learn from the best? So that not that wine causes uh the person to argue and quarrel, but the one who argues and quarrels, he's the one who's going to drink wine. That would be learning from back to forward, right?
Yeah. So in other words, the first we're thinking that who is it that that says "oi" and "avoy"? It's those who hang around wine. But the latter explanation is there are two kinds of people who should or who would benefit from wine: those who are in mourning, crying out "oi boy," or those who are um, who get into fights. Um,
And
those
those are the people that are going to drink wine. The people who
right.
argue and so forth, that would be from back to the beginning. Those people who argue,
Yes,
they're the
yes,
ones who drink the
exactly.
wine.
Mourners and people and wicked people, which we understand here as people who get into arguments. Darish Over Gilila, over from the Galil says Shalosh Esrei Vavin Nemru B'yayin. There's 13 times when you have a vav attached to wine. Vayachal Noach ish adama vayitakarim. Noach became an agronomist and he planted a vineyard. Vayesh min hayayin vayishkar. He drank from the wine and he became drunk. By Yiskal b'socha alo, and he rolled around in his tent, or he became uncovered in his tent. Vayar Cham avi Canaan sarvas aviv v'hagelu shnei chavachus, and Cham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's exposure, his nakedness, and he told his brothers outside. Vayikach Shem v'Yefes asim lav vayasim al Shem Shneim. Shem and Yefes took a garment and they put it on their shoulders. It's the whole story of Noach there. And Noach sobered up and he realized what had happened. So there's 13 vavs um, um, uh, that are prefixed to words in this passage. Um, yeah, so what Vav is, sorry, 16 is,
13.
no, 13. Um, Okay, so it's unclear what this, what the Gemara is trying to get at with this. There's an explanation which seems a little forced here in the Art Scroll commentary, that 13 of these 16 are vowelized with a patah, so it's va, and vav yud is vai, which is like oi, which isn't really the same word. I don't know, it's kind of unclear. Um, what the significance of 13 is, or 16 here is. Rav Shmuel Chanamar Serso Chanamar Ravo.
Thir-
Well, so what happened in that story?
You have
What
13
did
or you have 16? It says 13,
16?
right?
Yeah, I know. So it's like unclear. So what? Like, what does that tell us? 16.
Well, if you
So
have,
what?
like you said, if you have the vav and the yud, you were saying that that's oi, like oi vavoy. The person is it's a
Oh
misfortune,
yeah, that's
misfortune to someone who drinks the wine, I guess.
yeah, yeah. But there's 16 vavs. Vav and
Yeah.
yud make 16.
Well, that's a gematria, right? So what's it? Is that what
But
vav and yud,
there's 13
vav?
where it's vowelized with a patach, which would make vi. I don't know. It seems like a fragment that
I don't
is
know why
not.
you have to. Why are you mentioning a gematria? Just say it's oi vavoy. It's
What does that have to do with 16?
where's 16? Where's
I
16?
mean, with 13. Sorry, what does that have to do with
No,
13?
forget about the 30. Just oh, I know. Okay, that's the question. What does that do? I don't know, but it says oi, void, then it's a bad omen, a misfortune. Like we said, but oi, that he should be drinking wine. He suffers, whatever.
Yeah, but like,
Why
what's the
13?
connection between these
Oh,
vavs
and
and the word
13?
oi? What is the connection between these 13 vavs, which are really 16, and the word oi? What's the connection?
Connection between the
Unclear.
I don't know. I don't know why it has to be 30. You could find it could be it could have two and there could be oi. I mean, I don't know. Why is it 13? I don't know.
Okay, so what happened there with Noach? Rav Shmuel Chanamar Serso v'Chanamar Rivo. One said that the son castrated Noah, and the other said that he sodomized him. Monday Amar Sarso, the one says he castrated him mitoch shekil kolo b'revi, because Cham. So mitoch shekil kolo b'revi, since Cham uh, removed his ability, Noach's ability to have a fourth son, kilo b'revi. So he cursed him through his fourth son, Canaan. So this takes the view that that the Canaan was the fourth son um, of Ham, um, because it says later in the genealogy that the sons of Ham were Putu Mitzrayim, Kushu Mitzrayim, Putu Canaan. Canaan was the fourth son, so that's how he cursed him. Umandi Amar Ravo, but the one that says that he sodomized him, Gamar Vayar Vayar, because we take the word Vayar Cham Avikanan, Cham saw. What does that mean? Ksiv Hacha Vayar Cham Avikanan Serval Savi, Ksiv Hasam Vayar Osa Shem ben Chamar. When Shem laid his eyes on Dinah, so Rashi there actually, Vayishkav Osavayana, he slept with her and he tormented her. Rashi explains that that means he had anal sex with her. So that is what we apply from the same word bayar to Cham and Noach. So Bishlam Lamandi Amar Sarso Kilo Bervis. I understand Mishuach Kilo Bervis. So that explains if you say that the castration is what happened and it's related to why he cursed Canaan, the fourth son. Lamandi Amar Ravo Maishna Ravi Nolatye Behedya. Like if you think that the violation here was sodomizing him, then why are you punishing Canaan? If Ham did the offense, then why is he being punished through his fourth son, Canaan? So hava ha havai. Um, because that view maybe includes both castrating and sodomizing him, and so then it makes sense that still makes sense that the punishment would be through the fourth son.
So he did both? Is that he's saying according to that opinion, he did both?
Yeah, According to so one view is it was just castration, and the other view is it was castration and sodomy. So both of them have a explanation as to why he was punished through the fourth son, because they both think that castration was involved here. Noach planted a vineyard. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Ukva, v'Yamar Lo, Amar Ukva, v'Yamar Rav Yitzchakai. Amar Lo Kadosh Baruch Hu Noach. God said to Noach, Noach, Lo haya l'cha lima me'adam harishon. Shouldn't you learn from Adam? Shlo garm lo el b'yayim. His mistake was caused by wine. What does that mean? Commandi Amar also Elon shacham yimenu on rishon gefen haya. That follows the view that what was the fruit that Adam ate from? So the Gemara does not say anywhere that was an apple. That's a much later um, invention. One view in the Gemara is it was a grapevine. God is saying to Noah, look, Adam already messed up with the grape. So, like, shouldn't you have learned from him? The Tanya, what's the source for this? We have a Bryce or Meir, Omer, also in Shachal and Rishon, and then the Geffen Haya. That's Rav Meir's view that it was a grapevine. Maybe Yilol Adam Eliyain, because how do I know? Because nothing brings wailing to people like wine. In other words, there are negative consequences from wine. Rabbi Yehuda says a different view. Chitahaya was wheat. Abba ve'ima ashitom tam dagan, because a baby doesn't like get any knowledge or any understanding, which is indicated by his first words, saying Abba or Ima. That occurs once the infant starts to eat solid food or starts to eat grain. Rav Nechemia Omer Ta'enahaya was a fig tree. Shebidvar davar shekuklo bo nitaknu bo. Shenemar vayispur alei te'ena. Because where else do we find figs in that story? After they realize that they're naked, they take fig leaves and cover themselves. So he says. So this Rabbi Nechemia understands that. That it was the same tree. The same tree that produced their downfall also produced they're kind of trying to fix it by covering themselves. Okay. Now, going back to the topic of too much wine. Divrei Lemuel Melech Masa Sheyisarto Imo. The words of the king Lemuel, we'll see who that is in a minute. This is a prophecy which his mother told him off. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Shimon Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Malamish kefa'atu imo al ha'amud," means that so first of all, Lemuel was identified with Shlomo, so his mother tied him up to a whipping post. V'yamralo, and she said to him, "Ma bri ma bar bitnu uma bar nedarai." What is this, my son? What is this, fruit of my womb? What is this, the son of my vows? What does that mean? Ma bri, what does it mean, my son? Everybody knows that your father, David HaMelech, was a God-fearing person. So now if you are straying from the path, they're not going to blame the father, they're going to blame me, right? Bri, my son. Uma barbitni, what does it mean? What are you doing, son of my womb? All the other wives of David, once they became pregnant, he wouldn't want to see them anymore. But I let myself into his room. Kadeshi Haley ben Mizoros and Muluban. So I would have a son who is robust and fair. So don't I took my life in my hands, as it were, or I did something extraordinary to conceive you, so don't mess it up. Uma bar nidar, and what is this, son of my vows? What does that mean? Kol nashim shel beisavicha hayu nodros. All of your father's other wives would take the following nether: Yeheli ben Hagun Lamalchus. Let me have a son good, fit to be the king. Vani. And I'll do. They did Nadarim in order to get this reward, for that their sons should become king. But my netter was Yeheli ben Zariz and Mumula Batar v'Hagol Navius. I didn't care about being king, which is actually quite different from what we read in the Navi, right? In Shmuel, she was very interested in him being king, but the Gemara understands. I didn't care about you being king. I just wanted to be an upright person, and a ben Torah. And now you're messing up. Okay. Uh, Al l'melachim l'moel, al l'melachim sheso. Don't turn to kings who are l'moel, which we'll see what how the Gemara understands that, and don't turn to kings who are drunk. Al l'melachim, don't turn to kings. Amarlo, she said to him, Malacha it's l'melachim sheshosim yain mishtakrim. What are you hanging out with these other kings who are drunks? If you lama lanuel, and they say limuel, why do we need God? In other words, they drink wine and um, they become apostates. Ula Rosnim a shechar, and the pasuk continues. It's um, and shouldn't Rosnim, which translated here as rulers, saying where's the booze? Misha called Raze Olam Gluyim Lo Yishtayim Mishtaker. Someone, so we're interpreting the word Rosnim. Ros is a secret, also, right? So you, Shlomo, who know all the secrets of the world. Yishtay yain v'yishtaker. Are you going to drink wine and become drunk? It's not. It's unseemly. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak. Minayin shechazer Shlomo v'hodol imo. And how do you know that Shlomo did tshuva and um, he gave in as a word to his mother? Dichsiv Kibar anochim eish v'lo binas adam li. I'm more foolish than a man, and I don't have the understanding of Adam, of a man. Kivar anochim eish. I'm more foolish than a man. Minoach means I'm more foolish than Noach. D'chsiv vayachol Noach ish adamah. Noach is referred to as a man of the earth. V'lo binas adam li zadam rishon, and I'm not as smart as Adam means the Adam Harishon. So Shlomo is saying I should have learned from Adam and Noah, who, as we said, messed up through grapes and wine. Okay, back to our
What is
Mishnah.
Lemuel? Who is this king Lemuel?
Lemuel was identified as Shlomo.
What's that?
Shlomo,
Lemuel is Shlomo?
yes, in this understanding. I mean, it is in Mishlei, so yeah. I don't know any more about that topic, but here the Gemara clearly identifies Lemuel as Shlomo by associating him with his mother Bathsheba.
Okay.
The Mishnah says if you ate this meat and wine at a mitzvah ceremony, a mitzvah meal, then that doesn't count as a ben saromara. In order to qualify as a ben saromara, you have to eat in a group of all a bunch of good for nothings. Um, so, like if it's a mitzvah ceremony, then you can't become a ben Sora or Mora. So Tama the mitzvah. So the reason that a mitzvah ceremony doesn't count is because it's for a mitzvah, right? Halav mitzvah. But if you ate with the same group and it wasn't a mitzvah ceremony, alfagav to love kula srikin, even though not every that doesn't seem to be the criteria. The criteria doesn't seem to be a mitzvah ceremony or not. The criteria, uh, you're saying the criteria is who's seated around the table with you. If they're all good for nothings, then that doesn't count. But by stating that that a mitzvah thing doesn't count, indicates that there must have been some normal people there, not all good for nothings. Hakamashmalan. No, the Gemara says no. That's not what it's telling you. What it's telling you is the Afal Gav Kula Sarikin. Even if everybody there is a good for nothing, give it a mitzvah kasik lo mimsha. Since it's a mitzvah ceremony, even though everybody else there is a disreputable person, and ordinarily you would think that that's going to draw the person in and repeat his behavior. Nonetheless, if it was at a mitzvah ceremony, it's still considered something that is not going to draw him in in a negative way.
Only in the case where they were sitting there not for the purpose of a mitzvah.
Right.
Would that be, he would be liable? Would he be considered soger or moger?
Zolel Saveh, yeah.
Zoler
Achal
v'soger.
Ibra HaChodesh. What if you ate at a Ibra HaChodesh meal? Then that doesn't count. That's a mitzvah thing. L'meimer the Basar Yayin Masku. Does that indicate that they would eat meat and wine at this Ibra HaChodesh meal? Vatanya, but we have a brisa. Ein olin la el b'pastagan v'kinis bovad. This kind of meal was only grain and beans, right? No, there was no meat or wine. Um, so like if there's no meat or wine, it doesn't matter if it's a mitzvah thing or not. If then it doesn't count. Only meat and wine counts as the Ben Soromara eating. So the Gemara says Hakamash Malan Afal Gav the Ein Olin La El Pasikitin. Even though what was served at the meal was just grain and beans. But he brought his own meat and wine. So even though he actually ate meat and wine at this meal, even though that wasn't everybody else was eating, it's still not going to be the kind of thing that draws him in. This kind of meal has to be at least 10 people. And it's only grain and beans. And it's a nighttime meal after the leap day. It's not a daytime meal, it's a nighttime meal. Vatanya, but don't we have a brisa? Another brisa says the opposite. That it's not a nighttime meal; it's a daytime meal. We answer this by referring to Rav Chia, who said to his sons, "Achrifu v'ulu, achrifu upuku." Um, Go up, even though the meal is going to be at night, like go up, early while it's still day, and come down, before the sun comes up. Ki heche delishmu b'chu inshi. So, like be the first ones there. Line up to get in before nighttime, so that people will know that you were there. In other words, he's encouraging this practice. So they may have gone up to the room, to the banquet hall during the day, but the meal didn't begin until nighttime.
So
Another
what does
thing that
that
doesn't.
mean then? That means that it would not be considered soleil v'sovei if he could
Right.
start eating early.
Now we're just discussing the parameters. We've already established that this kind of meal is not doesn't count for Ben Soroma. Right now, we're just discussing some of the details of this meal. On one hand, we said it was at nighttime, and the other hand, Rav Chia told his sons to go up in the daytime, and we resolved that contradiction by saying he told them go up while it's still light, be the first in line to get in. But the meal is actually at nighttime. That's just a side detail about this meal. It has nothing to do
So
with Ben
these people
Soroma.
start their celebrating as early as possible and continue as long as possible.
Yeah. Achel Master Sheni B'Yerushalayim. Master Sheni eating in Yerushalayim is also a mitzvah thing. Doesn't count as ben saramara. Kevin dechi arche hukachile. Since he's using the money or the food in a positive way, lo mimshich. He's not going to be drawn into to continue this behavior. Achal Nevelos Trefus Shatir Masim. If you ate non-kosher food, that doesn't count either. Amarava Achal Basar Of. If you ate chicken, Ein Nasa Ben Saramara. Chicken doesn't count either. Vanansnan Achal Nevelos Trefus Shatir Masim. Ein Nasa Ben Saramara. Hatahorin Nasa Ben Saramara. If you're talking about eating, these other kinds of food which are an avera, like these are not. This is not meat, right? Shkatzim or Masim, obviously, if it's not meat, then why do you have to even say that it doesn't qualify as Ben Saromara if it's not kosher? It doesn't count because it's not meat. Um,
But he could
so
become Enonasa ben Soromora. But he's saying we're learning that it could become, right?
yeah, the Mishnah says if you eat shkatzim or masim, right? If you eat bugs, then that doesn't count. Well, of course that doesn't count. It's not because the bugs aren't kosher. It's because it's not meat. You have to eat meat to qualify as a ben saromara. Right? So this implies by stating that eating bugs doesn't count as ben saromara, um, doesn't that imply that if they were kosher bugs, if you eat locusts, then you would? It implies that it would be ben saromara, but that's not the case. That contradicts the idea that it has to be meat. So Gemara says, "Kitnan nami masnisim." We also learn in the Mishnah lahashlim. It means. Um, you ate the bugs like together with meat to fill out the measure of tartemar basar or mana basar, right? So in other words, your meal the measure of meat doesn't have to be the full measure only of meat. It can be meat mixed with other things that make the measure. And if some of those things are not kosher, then it doesn't count as ben saromara. Dvar mitzvah, tanchumi avelim. So the Gemara says, like the Mishnah had said, anything that's a dvar mitzvah. So the Gemara includes tanchumi avelim, meaning a meal to comfort the mourners. Dvar avera, what is another dvar avera? Tanis tzibur, eating on a fast day. V'tamamai. So, like, what is the reason that if you eat a forbidden food, it doesn't count as ben sarah amarkra? And then shomea b'kolenu. The parents say to the court, he's not listening to us. B'kolenu. He's not listening to us, the parents. V'lo b'kol shamakim. We're not talking about someone who is also controverting the will of God, right? The law of God. That doesn't count as a ben sarah. Achal kol machal v'lo achal basar. What if you eat? Okay, I think actually we'll stop here. Um, Next page. What time was it? Yeah, I think we'll just stop here. The time is up, and that was a long daf. Okay.
We
Have a good
stop
day.
here. We stop here.
Have a good day, everybody.